Hello and welcome to the debate. I'm your host Rana Maqbool with you at PTV World. In today's show, we will be taking a look at two very important stories. The first is in reference to what was held today with reference to the Prime Minister, Shehbaz Sharif, along with important ministers, and talking, of course, about the various aspects of the political dynamics that have been going on for quite some time, and also in reference to what earlier has transpired in the apology that was given by the Daily Mail, the British publication, who had apologized for an earlier article that was written with reference to the Prime Minister Shehbaz Sharif, talking about how the Prime Minister then embezzled with the funds that were given in for the flood aid victims, and that the family was responsible in taking the money which was for the people of the flood victims. And then when we take a look at this particular situation, then of course the Prime Minister is now redeemed. He has spoken about this at length and has also talked about what exactly happened in terms of the cost that he had to pay personally as well, and then of course what Pakistan had to also go through, considering that the entire image was tarnished of a country who had received donations for a natural catastrophe, which were then used by the then political setup for other reasons, which was what the article back then was accusing him of. But now, of course, the publication has taken down the articles and have also rendered an apology. And to this, the Prime Minister spoke about how this was important in terms of the Sharif family's name, of course, the kind of commitment and sanctity that has always been upheld by the PMLN. And then, of course, also in reference to what the PTI did in the time when the article was released, talking about the PMLN, the way that the party has taken in money, what they did, how they handled the government, and of course what the accused with regards to the PTI chairman, talking about being someone who's never patriotic towards the country and has, of course, taken a look at only his own political gain. Something, of course, that we have seen over the past few months is perhaps evident more of him rather than the incumbent setup. But then when we take a look at exactly what has happened then and now, what the Prime Minister kept on referring to was the fact that the PTI has considered its own political gain as more important than the country's, and that, of course, has damaged the foreign policy and the economy to great length, and which is what he reiterated in the press conference held earlier today as well, talking about how the image of the country has, of course, been damaged, and that the PTI chairman and his minions took a heartless approach in this Daily Mail case, not taking a look at the facts and not bothering to go ahead with the investigation, instead using this as a way to malign the PMLN. We're going to be talking a little bit more about this in our first segment, taking a look at what this and other measures and steps taken by the PTI, the result that those measures have had in terms of the damage the country has had to bear, especially in terms of foreign policy and the economy. And then, of course, still we are dealing with, which what the finance minister also spoke about with regards to speculations of the country defaulting, again talking about how this is not something that is going to happen, and that in fact what was done earlier was that the PTI had laid down landmines for the next government because of the way that their economic policies had been going ahead. And because of these reasons, he has also talked about exactly what the PTI had done in the past and how that is still something that the current setup is dealing with. That is going to be our first segment of the show today. Our next one is going to take a look at what has happened in the KP Assembly, which has passed the helicopter bill despite huge opposition coming in and, of course, a lot of protests with regards to how this is not something that should be passed and that there are many reservations and so should be discussed as well. The aircraft helicopter bill is something that allows the Chief Minister, along with the ministers and other public office holders, to be able to use aircrafts and helicopters for their own official or otherwise purposes as well. And then, of course, this also applies back from 2008 to now, which, of course, the opposition is saying is a way for the PTI to be able to seek NRO and to justify their usage in the past as well, and how this is not something that the province can afford and something that will be abused and so should not be passed. We're going to take a look at that at the end of the show today. For this and more, as always, in the studios, I've been joined by senior analyst Farooq Patafi. And for our first segment of the show today, we've been joined by Mr. Rana Maqbool Ahmad, who's a senator PMLN. And we've also been joined by Dr. Hakan Najib, who's a senior economist. Thank you very much, gentlemen, for being a part of the show today. Let me start with you, Rana Saab. Considering, of course, what the Prime Minister said is very evident of the fact that he, of course, is as is obvious, is pleased with the fact that the Daily Mail has taken down its publications and that he has been redeemed. But what is, of course, unfortunate that he kept pointing out is the way that the PTI chairman had dealt with this particular case in the past, terming it heartless, and also referring to the kind of tactics that had been used by the PTI in the past. Also talking about how perhaps the explanations coming in from DFID were also delayed just so that this particular issue could be talked about in the public, and that the name of the PMLN and Shehbaz Sharif could be maligned. But then when we look at what has happened now, it seems that all of that in the past is now rendered baseless. But it seems to be the case that even when we take a look at the fact that there is an apology, there is the fact that there is a retraction of all the publications of the article in the past. However, it seems that even now we don't see the kind of statements or the kind of sentiment perhaps that one would hope for from the PTI coming in, and what the Prime Minister has now termed as heartless. Is that really the case?
It's extremely heartless, Ona. My salam to all participants, honorable participants. It's extremely unethical. I also would like to comment, it's immoral as well. It's very contemptuous, unfortunately. A leader, as he claims, a leader of caliber, does it suit such a leader to do such things? Go for total unreal? I personally think he lives in a world of utopia, and more so utopia which is contaminated with lies and fallacies, unfortunately. There is a syndrome of total characterlessness. He does not ascertain the truth in any matter. He is so fond of slanders and leveling allegations, unfounded allegations. This is extremely irresponsible behavior. He has not done only once, he has done many times, he does every day, unfortunately. Now, once this case was cooked up against the President Prime Minister, and so much of material was given to this David Rose, Mr. David Rose, who visited Pakistan. Then he met certain people in prisons as well. He collected a lot of material, and he was sent with full preparations. So much so the Secretary, British Interior Secretary, Ms. Patel, also intervened and for the purposes of investigation of the case. And it was investigated as well. But what happens later on? They had to withdraw this total plethora of allegations, and there was nothing left for them except for repentance and tendering unqualified apologies. But in turn, what we have gained, the nation has gained defamation, his condemnatory contribution towards the country, defaming the Prime Minister, defaming the senior most politicians in the country, doesn't mean only defaming the political individuals. It's a defamation for the whole of the country, whole of the system. So Mr. Imran Khan has been playing with the future of the nation due to his malice. And I'm sorry I'm using these words, but he deserves much more than that. God willing, he reforms himself. He is in this, at the age of, he's above 70 now. I don't know whether he can learn something or not. But whatever he has been doing, that has jeopardized the future of the country. And
right,
it would be very difficult.
Right, and I want to
Yes,
talk about the impact and the damage that this has had, and among other things. Dr. Hakan, considering that, of course, the economy has also been largely impacted with the kind of political instability we've seen in the past. But what transpired back when this article was released also is the fact that this put a huge question mark on Pakistan's credibility and its ability to handle money given in aid or in the form of donations, which was, of course, supposed to go to the flood victims. So because of that, there was huge question marks whether or not there is any transparency with people who are in the political setup for them to be able to distribute that money to those who are deserving and to those whom it is for. And so when we take a look at such an issue, I want to understand how big and how far-reaching an impact with regards to the future steps taken by other forms of donations or other countries coming forward as well has in terms of such an article coming out. I understand that the apology is here now and that the article is retracted, but there have been many years that have gone by, and I want to understand the impact that this has on the way that the countries look towards Pakistan when they want to provide aid or donation.
And Dr. Saab, if you are wearing the donor's hat, could you also imagine whether it is even a factor or it is not a factor at all while considering whether to give aid or not?
Sana and Patafi sir, thank you for inviting me as always. It's always my pleasure to be on PTV World. So look at it from the donor's perspective. Look at it from the perspective of the Western world or the developed countries who are providing you with money. Um, they always think that in the developing world, whether it's Pakistan or other countries, the systems, the governance structure, the corruption perception, the linkages all remain weak. And on top of that, if we have damaging articles about our leaderships, if we have damaging articles about how we spread our money, or how we spend our money, that always makes a higher dent into anything that we do. And that's despite the fact who is in power. As a professional, I'm trying to comment on, how we must build our image, even if we have weak systems. There is no doubt that in the developing world, the systems are weak, and the governance indicators that the world looks at paint a picture of a weak governance system, whether that's at the federal level, then even weaker at the provincial level, and of course the district governments don't even exist in Pakistan. So considering that, and considering the fact that you've had a 30 to 40 billion dollars of damage in terms of relief and the effort needed to rebuild Pakistan's infrastructure, we must present a face where we can handle the monies that are coming in. And as you can see, and I've said this over and over to the Western friends, to multilateral partners, even in my private conversations at an international level, the kind of monies that should have come into Pakistan have not come in. Yes, there is donor fatigue internationally, but it is also the fact that Pakistan is going through an uncertain political period where there is no consensus on a number of issues and also on the timing of the election cycle. And then barring all the other events taking place, couple that with the fact that you're going through a very challenging domestic economy, which is bleeding on the external side and even on the fiscal side. We need more monies so that these monies can be spent on the people. But we are in an IMF program, so we have more of a straight jacket where we can't spend that kind of money. Couple that with the fact that the international community itself is going through the harshest winter and through the harshest time of a global slowdown. At this time, Pakistan, and I say this with all my heart to Pakistan, to all the leaderships, that they have to put up some kind of political certainty which creates
Yeah.
economic certainty.
Right, absolutely. And that's, of course, extremely important. And perhaps something that the Prime Minister also referred to when he talked about how there needs to be perhaps introspection when we take a look at the PTI's leadership in the past, and especially the actions of the PTI chairman in terms of who we take in terms of the responsibility to run the entire country, and then, of course, the kind of actions and the consequences that that has on the foreign policy and economy. But Farooq, perhaps more than introspection, we also need accountability, and we also need to understand how we emphasize and enhance the role of the parliament and be able to take that forward. But it seems that that is the way forward in terms of strengthening our political setup, and then, of course, having the positive impact that we need towards our economic situation as well. But moving towards that direction is not something that we have seen. And because of that, how do we expect our political setup to strengthen if our focus is perhaps on other things?
Right, Sana, and that is an intriguing question, especially because you started from the parliament and need for accountability. And I was, while you were saying this, I was wondering, what do you do with a political party? Of course, Pakistan's parliamentary system allowed PTI to become a very important, a vital part of the political system. But what do you do with a party that even when it is winning, by elections, even then the head of the party is actually talking about presidential system rather than the parliament, right? It seems that parliament has become, or for quite some time, and I'm not merely talking about right now, People's Party, when it was in power, it actually, the Prime Minister used to regularly go there, and it was a very vital and active forum. But after that, gradually, because of the polarization kept on increasing in the country, PMLN and then PTI also, it seemed that it was not being taken that seriously, because the number of bills that were coming out of the parliament actually slowed down. And your second part of the second topic actually shows you why is it that political parties don't attach that much importance to the parliament, save their own interest. So something has to actually change. But coming back to the Prime Minister's presser today, it was very really needed at this moment, I think, even though there was some problem with the timing, duration, and because the cabinet had to go into a meeting, it was cut short very quickly. But I wish that all the panelists which were there, especially planning minister was there as well. So I was hoping to actually hear more about the flood plans as well. But one thing that actually really stood out, Sana, and that worried me as well, was the finance minister, while he was assuring of viewers and the citizens of the country that there isn't going to be any default. He also mentioned that wheat and dollars are being smuggled to a neighboring country because there are only so many countries that are neighboring. Of course, it can't be China, it can't be India, it can't be Iran. So naturally, I have to conclude it is Afghanistan. And that is a big concern, because when Taliban took over, and today there was an incident as well, it should worry us, because then we have a wild western border which doesn't seem to be coming under control. So that was a very serious issue. I hope to hear what the government is going to do regarding that as well. And then the Prime Minister also actually referred to some fiscal deficiencies, especially when it came to catering to the needs of 33 million people who have been affected by the floods. I think that I hope to hear more from the federal cabinet and Prime Minister in coming days.
Right, absolutely. And Rana Sahab, you can also add to that. But earlier, once you were part of our show and we spoke about the call for dissolution of assemblies in Punjab and KP, and you said to forget about it because that's not going to happen. And that may be the case, but we see that perhaps the PMLN seems to also be making preparations or making a statement of sort with those preparations that they are ready for any such measures to be taken. And then there was also, of course, talk of Nawaz Sharif's return also in the country, and perhaps the welcome tilting the favor of any elections to be held in Punjab in the near future in the PMLN's favor. Why is it that these statements are coming out? Is it just the value of the statement itself that you want to go ahead with, or is there an actual possibility of elections in Punjab?
Yes, they're both the things together. Number one, the Muslim Leaguers are missing their leader, their Qaid, too much, frankly speaking. He is a different political leader, unlike other leaders. And people have a lot of liking for him. There is a romance of his followers. This is the situation of romance. So it's over 3 years he is not here. They want he should come as early as possible. They're just fish out of water. This is the subjective factor of the party. Next, we are getting close to elections, maybe 7, 8 months, 9 months. For that purpose, you have to mobilize people. You have to mobilize support. You have to mobilize the dominant areas of the political situation, because the experience in the by-elections, frankly, admitting this fact, that we didn't work hard at all in both the by-elections. We would have done much better than what we could perform. So that is the realization. So they think, the party thinks, without his being here, there will not be impregnable mobilization.
Right, absolutely. Dr. Hakan, considering, of course, that when we take a look at the economic situation, as Farooq was talking about, there is, of course, the finance minister's side telling us that there is nothing to worry about.
Yes.
Rana Sahab, we unfortunately lost your voice. I'll come back to you. Let me just quickly go to Dr. Hakan, and I'll let you finish your thought later. Dr. Hakan, considering the finance minister spoke about these things and has done in the past as well, he also reiterated the sort of situation that the government had to inherit, and of course then the kind of tough measures that it had to take. But of course, when we take a look at the kind of economic situation that we have now, there are still things that are worrisome and that are of concern. And then there seems to be not enough time in terms of the way that the next steps are going to pan out. What exactly do you foresee in terms of the remaining fiscal year for the government to be able to do in terms of making sure that the tough decisions that it has taken, in fact, can result in something that we can speak about to the public as well?
And Dr. Saab, I seem to have actually lost count how many times you have actually urged the political parties to sit together for the stability of country's economy, but that doesn't seem to be happening. And repeatedly, a call comes from the opposition that if there are elections, there's going to be economic stability. Do you actually concur? Because it seems to be a very strange kind of, articulation on their behalf. First of all, we'll have to see 3 months caretaker setup. Then who comes to power? We don't know. How long will it take for the government to form? We don't know. And what kind of program is there? We don't know. We haven't heard PTI or any other political party, especially those who are out of the system, what kind of plans or programs they have.
So Sana, starting from your question, what you've put is actually the right perspective. The situation was tough when PMLN came in or PDM came in. The situation has remained tough or even gotten tougher because our forex reserves are at about $6.7 billion. Our exports have slowed by about 3% compared to last year in the first few months of this fiscal year. Our remittances have also dropped, both the domestic challenges and global challenges. So, and the uncertainties overall in the country. Then what is challenging is, of course, to put this 23 odd billion dollars that you need to pay off and the 10 billion you need to have to pay current account. So this will be the next 7 to 8 months challenge. Though I think inflation was the challenge they had thought when they had formed government, But I think the challenge is completely shifted to maintaining a balance of payments where we don't incur any kind of crisis. Right now, it's challenging. We are not in a crisis, so let's not get into a crisis. And for that, Patafi Saab and Sana, IMF would remain to be the base. My base scenario still is that we will get into an IMF program in January, and one puts in a good word for Pakistan wherever one can, and the IMF to come back in January, the government to show leniency on whatever data is being asked. That would be my best approach. Sometimes you have to, get your head down and let the storm pass. This is that kind of situation. So let's handle it that way. So IMF gives us their money, we get other monies. The dollar versus rupee stabilizes, and we pass through this time. And with the betterment in the petroleum prices in the world, there is some semblance on the inflation side. So the government has, or whichever government is there, can help the people pass through the harsh winters a bit more comfortably. That's my base scenario to pass through. Patafi Saab, on your point, I've always said, look, we are a country over 75 years. Yes, there have been different forms of government, but these political leaders have been around for a long time. They are mature enough to realize that fighting or having an opposition is part of a parliamentary democracy. But at some times, creating certainty in the country is more important. And that's what I've been saying, whether it's a tripartite negotiation between, handled by the presidency and the opposition and the sitting government, but some kind of certainty must be seen where we can see an election cycle coming through whenever it comes through, it suits these things. And that would give credence. It is not going to be easy for even the interim setup to come in and handle. And whoever comes in next, the harsh decisions they would have to take would be very, very tough on them. Another IMF program would be looking us into the future, 80 or $110 billion in the coming years, and we'll talk about how the next 3 years are looking. So this is an overall tough time. We want to ride this country out of the present and even in the medium term through very, very challenging waves. So let's get our head down, create certainty at least, and whoever wins elections, of course,
Right.
they have to take decisions which will make them,
Absolutely. Dr. Zab, what creates more stability, a political engagement or consensus, or then fresh elections? Could you answer that as well?
Political engagement to create certainty when the elections would be. I've always said you don't need political stability as much as you need political certainty. Right now, there is uncertainty. Will the assemblies get dissolved? Will there be a snap bypoll? Will there be a general election? When will be the general election? Certainty around all these, even if there were to be snap polls, by elections, general elections, but certainty to the markets, domestic and international. And please remember, even the friends that you're asking for billions of dollars, be it China, UAE, US, Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, or Qatar. These are the main players that we are asking for monies, right? They are also probably thinking of some kind of certainty to occur in the country. And I keep saying these are elderly politicians. These are people who've been there. I think they can get their heads together and find some
Right,
certainty for them.
absolutely. And Rana Sab is talking about you, so you should also be listening carefully, I'm assuming, with regards to your future plans. But please do complete your earlier thought as well. But let me pose another question to add to that. Considering, of course, that these are important measures that are needed for our economic situation to be uplifted at the moment, and we can understand perhaps when we talk about these measures that this is something that the government has had to do, and that perhaps we are moving in the right direction, and eventually we'll be able to reap the benefits of what we're doing today. But perhaps the general public may not understand or have a genuine understanding of what the government is doing or how it's taking these measures. And then, of course, there is the issue of high commodity prices that they have had to deal with, and it seems that unfortunately, because the incumbent government is you guys, this is the backlash of all of that falls on you as well. How do we bridge that gap of the people's understanding of what is happening and align that with the kind of efforts that are being put in by the current government?
Snod, there's a big issue of enforcement, as you rightly pointed out in your previous discussion. As told by Finance Minister, that we are going to seal the borders, we'll stop smuggling of dollars as well as wheat across to the other country. So that was already a situation. But we are late in nipping this evil in the bud. We didn't do much. Therefore, we are paying for that. Okay, we have risen to the occasion now. I hope that this enforcement proves to be effective, and it's a foolproof enforcement. If it is a half-hearted enforcement, it will backfire. Identically, I may also submit to this August forum that there is a lot of liability of the provincial governments. We always look up to the provincial government, up to the federal government for the solution to the problem. The price management in the province of daily use articles and daily use necessities is the baby of the provincial government. Market committees are with the provincial government. The enforcement machinery is with the provincial government.
Shouldn't that be with the local government, sir?
Local government, otherwise there is a district government system, which is there is no local government at all in Punjab so far, but it's replaced with the enforcement system of the city government. The city government is there, their machinery is there, their executives are there. They are not being used for price enforcement, for taking action against the hoarders and the stockists, and the rate management, the market management, that is not being carried out. So therefore, this link is missing. Therefore, the predicament of people is increasing day by day. So the provincial governments, they have to also manage the food industry. The flour mills are with them, food supply is with them, the food stocks, the wheat stocks are with them. So they are not regulating it properly. Since I'm student of this phenomena of mechanism and enforcement, we can't analyze these issues in isolation. That is the major obstruction nowadays. The provincial governments are not performing. They must come up to the expectation of the people. Hoarders keeps hoarding the stock, but there is nobody to check him.
Right, absolutely. Rana Sahab, we'll talk more about...
Agony of the people is increasing. Yeah. So, Sana, I may also, if you allow me, venture to disagree with an economic icon like Dr. Najib. He said politicians have been at the helm of the affairs. No doubt they have been. Were they really at the helm of the affairs? If we get back to the situation back in 2017-18, was Prime Minister of Pakistan, Mian Nawaz Sharif, whose setup was so productive and doing so well, was he really at the helm of the affair? The way he was kicked out.
What I understand from Dr. Saab's statement is that he is telling you that you guys are actually the heroes of the story, whether you agree or not.
Right.
So you have to steer everyone out of the crisis.
Yes, that is there. We'll do that. We have been already doing that. Give us the opportunity. We'll perform. And
You
Mian
have all the
Nawaz and
opportunities. We're going to conclude this
his
segment.
people
Farooq,
always
anything you'd
perform.
like to add before that? Yes, you are. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Sana, it all actually comes back to the question of accountability. Whether it is Daily Mail story, the way all these, contentious parties, particularly, the accountabilities are of that moment, other people, the way they framed it and they defamed Pakistani government or Pakistani state, whether there's going to be any accountability or not. That is the question. What exactly, I don't know about UK, but what is going to happen in this country? That is my question. Similarly, Afghanistan, for past many months, there have been negotiations which failed, clearly failed, and because of that, there has been terrorism. And then there have been people around who have been telling us that if Afghan Taliban come over there in power on the other side, everything is going to be hunky-dory. All those people who were telling us and actually blindsiding us into this crisis, when today they have killed 6 people on our border just because our heroes were trying to fix the, boundary, taking care of the boundary. At that time it happens. Who is going to hold those people accountable? These are questions that we have to ask. If you are not going to have a follow-up, then we will keep on shuttling from one crisis to the other, and there will always be the question, who is going to be held accountable?
Right, and Rana Sahab, these are important questions for you, but we're short on time, so I'm going to quickly go to Dr. Haqqan. Thank you very much for being a part of this segment. We're going to move on to the next one, but I'm not going to let you go before giving you a chance to respond to what Rana Sahab said earlier.
So what I'm trying to say is that these politicians or not, they've been around, and I think there is some kind of political maturity. I'm actually giving them more credit and saying that now is the time. We are seeing that they have taken control. All the establishment, the judiciary are trying to back this political developing culture in the country, which it should. By all means, the people are looking forward towards them. So let's hope we see something.
Right,
And I'll
absolutely.
always say to them.
Right. Thank you very much,
We
Dr.
look forward
Haqqan, for joining us and being a part of the debate. Rana Sahab, stay with us. We'll take a short break and be back with the next segment.
गेम ऑन है।
Welcome back to the debate. So the KP Assembly has passed what they call the helicopter bill, despite opposition coming in, and then of course questions being raised as to why this is being done, also with the opposition parties terming this as an NRO by the PTI. Rana Sahab, considering what has happened, this seems to be a sort of act where we take a look at what has happened in the past as well in terms of the usage of helicopters or aircrafts, and then obviously of course moving forward, trying to justify exactly what happened or the expenses that occurred. And that may be one part of the story and perhaps a concern that the opposition seems to be raising. But what else do you think seems to be the problem with this bill? Why do you think it is being met with such high opposition?
Sana, it's a syndrome of collective sin. It's a collective sin.
Okay.
Iqbal once observed, फितरत अफराद से हमास तो कर लेती है, करती नहीं मिल्लत के गुनाहों को कभी माफ. Collective sin is not forgiven. It's a collective sin by the parliamentarians of the KPK. This concession has been given retrospectively. Is there any permission of loot and plunder under law? How can you rent out the official machinery to the ordinary people? Can you do it? And number two, how can you misuse such a big facility which is so costly? You cannot. It's a crime. So the crime has been committed, and I personally think because their leader, he wanted exemption from any prosecution and from any probe. It will not stand in the court of law. If at all it's challenged in the High Court, it will be quashed. If it is challenged in the Supreme Court, it will be quashed. This is no law. It's all trash. They shouldn't have done it. They have brought further insult to the parliament. The people already don't have much of aspirations with the parliament. They have added insult to the injury. They shouldn't have done it. And it's only due to the pressure of their leader, who is an expert in doing and acting as an uncivilized, I'm sorry to use this, uncivilized and unethical person as far as qualities of leadership is concerned. That has been proven. He has become a slur for the country. And especially it is being discussed, mentioned everywhere, the way he has plundered 190 million pounds. The watches with the sacred replica and of the
Depiction
signs
of
of
Khanakaba.
depiction of Baitullah. What is he doing? What he has been doing? And if you remember their humbug which they created on the Rosa Rasul, so is it suitable for any political leader to do such things? Anil Musarrat and other people came. I am sure they have never come for the pilgrimage and they have never come for Umrah, but they came for this purpose. So man is totally misdirected and he is losing his political vitality and strength day by day. And
right, and I understand that, Rana Sahab, but I want to talk a little bit more about the bill as well, Farooq, especially with regards to the technicalities, and then also in terms of what options do the opposition even have. They may be raising their concerns, but what sort of legalities are involved. But when we take a look at the particular concessions that are being made or that have been highlighted with the bill, what essentially is the problem with that, despite what Rana Sahab was saying with regards to the PTI chairman's behavior in the past or what the leadership may have done or utilized? So essentially, if we take the bill in its absolute terms, what is wrong with it?
Right. And the simple answer is priorities. Look at the priorities. What exactly are we actually focusing on? Today, actually, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa's chief minister actually spoke to the media, and he said that they don't have the funds for FATA merger and those areas which were ex-FATA, right? At that time, and especially when 33 million people are displaced in this country, we don't know what exactly is going to become of the economy. And at that time, our lawmakers are passing bills to ensure that they can hire helicopters and aeroplanes.
That's true.
Right? Again, another big concern, when we haven't been able to give any kind of concession to the common man on the street regarding fuel prices. At that time, planes actually fly because of fuel. Without that, they cannot actually stay up in the air. And at that time, you are doing it, and then you have actually gone and applied it retrospectively. In the past also it is going to cover. So the only party that repeatedly ad nauseum keeps on talking about accountability cannot take any criticism or cannot face the music for its own wastage or its own abuse. That is the biggest concern right now. And remember, the earlier, Rana Sahab was also mentioning 190 million pound worth of, embezzlement of financial misconduct. That is a big issue as well, and still the NAB is actually probing that. Tomorrow, perhaps, Khyber Pakhtunkhwa government or Punjab Assembly, they are going to come up with a new bill that is to actually retrospectively actually take care of that business as well. That is not accountability, that is covering up. And if you want to keep on covering up, it is not going to help you at all, is it?
Right. And Rana Saab, we keep on talking about accountability, but we don't see much of it. Will you be able to hold these people accountable who are trying to, what Farooq is saying, cover certain things up?
Sana, I've been insisting, I insist every day. I complain against my own government for the slow speed and tempo in advancing the process of accountability. There are so many important cases which are in the pipelines. They must focus on that. They should be properly prosecuted in a foolproof manner with total dedication. Because once you are convinced such an offense has been taken, it should be properly taken in the courts of law, and the people who are guilty of that must pay through nose if you want to really give a lesson to the people. But time and again, now the Qaeda has also given the instructions to the government, for God's sake, rise to the occasion and tell your prosecution, tell your lawyers to go prepared to the courts of law and contest the cases properly and accelerate the process. Speed this process up as expeditiously as possible. So there is focus. Yes, I'm one of those humble parliamentarian who is an advocate of this cause of justice. And time and again, I'm reiterating. And maybe
Right.
there is some impact on the people, on our leadership here, to make their exercise productive.
Right. Absolutely. Yes, Farooq, very quickly. You want to add
Very
something?
quickly, I just wanted to actually put it on record. It is actually not called helicopter bill.
Aircraft
It is,
helicopter bill.
yeah, it is not. The real name is
Okay.
Minister Khyber Pakhtunkhwa
right.
Ministers' Salaries, Allowances and Privileges, Second Amendment Bill 2022. But having said that, it actually reminds me of a skit as well. When, if you remember, when Imran Khan Sahab was Prime Minister, and you know, Fawad Chaudhry Sahab actually went to the press and said that he only uses few kilometers worth of travel on helicopter. There was a skit that emerged from Khyber Pakhtunkhwa where one downed helicopter was used by somebody calling it rickshaw, and you know, they kept on saying, "Savari, Savari, come on, embark on it, and we are going to actually do it
That seems
for
to be
you."
the case.
That seems to be the approach, and that's why the term rickshaw was repeatedly used by the opposition in Khyber Pakhtunkhwa as well.
Right. Thank you, Farooq. Thank you, Rana Saab, for joining us. That's all we have
Thank
time
you very
for.
much.
And we hope to see more accountability, of course, coming in from all sides. That's all that we have from the debate. See you tomorrow.